Hello everybody, welcome to September's bullet journal. This month's theme is a little bit creative, so I would like you to be using some watercolors. If you don't have watercolor, I'll give you another little idea that we might be able to use. Your journal, if you don't have a journal with a thick paper page, you probably won't be able to do watercolor, so I suggest you only use pens. Our journals have 150 GSM internal pages, so they can take a little bit of water, not a full watercolor, but they've got enough to take what we're going to work with today. Our pens, I will put the codes down in the comments as usual. We've got a dark brown, a mid brown, and a kind of cream color plus black. And if you wanted to add a little bit of extra detail, the Secura Jelly Roll in a size 10 is a really good pen just to have on hand. I've also got a 0.8 fine liner, which is kind of my new go-to on headers, plus our hexagonal pencil and our hexagonal gel pen, my monthly stamp set, and a ramekin or some similar cup size bowl or vessel. This will all become clear in just a minute, so let me show you what we have in store for September. Kept it closed just to keep the page a little bit flat. So this is where we're at for September. Let me zoom in and show you the detail. As you can see, we're working with some watercolor here. It does make the paper go a little bit warped, but as you can see, no bleed through on the other page. So that's why our journals are really great for this. So we've got a coffee theme for this month, mainly because I feel I need a lot of coffee. It has been such a busy summer. The kids have never had such a jam-packed summer before. We're all absolutely shattered and we are ready for September to get back to some kind of normality. I'm telling you, it's absolutely chocker and I can't wait to get back to my morning routines. So we've got a watercolor effect background, which I'll show you how I'm working with this. I've had a little thought. If you don't have watercolors, I reckon you can mix coffee with some water and this could really give you the same effect. We've got these coffee cup spill type marks and some coffee beans. And there we go. Let me show you your templates, which will, as always, be added to this tutorial. You have a blank page plus your September graphic page. We've got a week to view, mixing in the kind of coffee spills with coffee cups. Can't say coffee cups without thinking about saying that. Sorry, that's my age coming through. Your dailies, a little kind of one coffee a day at least, right? Gosh, I'm looking forward to it. Come on, getting back into the daily routine of things. So there's all your dailies, your habit tracker, your mood tracker, which I really think is really cute. So we're going to fill these cups with our mood as we go along, and as per usual, your header page if you want to do your own ideas for spreads. So let's get my my doodle book out and I will show you what we're working with. We're going to have to come back a few times because I'm going to need to let the watercolor dry. So I'll stop and come back when we need to. So let's start with a little kind of run through of the different things we're going to be doing in this month's spread. So I am using a medium brush, paintbrush, and let me just show you how dirty my water is already because I did my spread this morning. So I've already got this kind of brown mix, and that just shows you that I think you're going to be able to do this with coffee if you don't have watercolors. So what we want to do is you can sketch out your cup or trace out your cup, but you need to do the watercolor background first. So this is how we'll do it. We're just going to apply a little bit of a water wash. Let me zoom in for you. So here's our water kind of sploshy wash, and then we're going to get an ever so little bit of paint. I am using Curate watercolor paints. I've had this for such a long time. I'm just choosing a few different colors, and I've kind of loaded my brush up, and I can kind of just dot the watercolor because we've already placed water on the page. It gives us that effect of a kind of spillage, and we can just kind of push it into the corners, and that is all you need to do, to be honest with you. You can make it more brown, you can make it more orange, you can mix a few different colors, you can add a little bit more water to it, but like I said, these pages can't take a huge amount of water, so we just kind of loosely mix it in and would leave that to dry, and it can be any splodgy shape you want. Now, I would suggest if you are doing the artwork, you would draw your cup in and then use this to kind of fill around the cup. I'll show you that in more detail when we come to doing the actual page. This is just to kind of show you the techniques. So the other little technique I've got is where this ramekin dish comes in handy. So this same colour that we've mixed for brown, or if you're choosing to try with the coffee, I think that's a really great idea. We're just putting a rim of colour around. You can mix a little bit of water around it, and we're using it just like this. Bosh. There we go. That's all it is to make your coffee ring. And if you want to make it a little thicker, you can easily just run your paintbrush around it, make a little bit, add a little bit of water to it to make it a little bit more sploshy if you wanted to. So that's another technique. Then the other thing that I've done is I'm using water already on my brush, and I'm mixing my coffee colours together and loading up my paintbrush, and you can just load it with a bit more water. What you want is you want it to drip. So we can be really, really patient and get some drips like this. Let me zoom in. Or we can use the front of our finger and just tap on the page and create some splatters, which I think is real fun, which I love. And this technique we'll do at the end after we've finished our cover page artwork. The other thing that I've done on a couple of them is I have got a little bit of paper. I'm just going to tear a little bit of paper off and squidge it down to make a kind of bigger mess. Basically, you can do that on some, kind of blot it to make more of a mess. And there we have pretty much the techniques that we're using today. The other thing is just a line drawing, so straightforward for our coffee beans. I'm just going to do like a half circle. Let me zoom in again for you. I'm doing a half circle and a kind of yin-yang idea, and then that goes around there and it kind of meets it, and there's a coffee bean. And then just basically the same, move that up, the same in just other directions, and you create a coffee bean kind of look. There's your coffee bean. Your coffee mug is pretty straightforward. It's just going to be I'm going to do it in pencil. So well, depending, the one on the front page is just a basic mug shape with a handle, so you can just sketch that out. Obviously we've got our messy thing, and then what I would suggest is doing the background first, doing it in pencil and then colouring in afterwards, and then adding your fine liner on top. But we'll go through that as we do the cover page. I think that covers most of the techniques, so you will need to wait for these things to dry before you move on to the next stage. I'm just going to clean up my workspace. Let's move on to the actual drawing. So moving on to our cover page. Now, as usual, you can trace this or you can freehand it however you wish to do it. So I have lightly traced it through as you can see, it's, oh, can you see it at all? It's such a fine guideline, which really helps me get this just kind of etched out. So just mainly for placement, just so you know things are central and you've got space to put your dates down here, just to keep things kind of organized. So as I said, we're going to use, I've actually got really dirty water, and that's fine. You can just have clean water for this and add the color on. So I'm going to just add the water real lightly into a squiggly shape, just to kind of outline our coffee cup. Let me zoom in a bit so you can see. And then I'm mixing my different color, coffee colored browns. So I've got the pigment on the brush now, and I'm just dropping that into the artwork. If you feel that you don't have enough water, just kind of load your brush again. But as I said, be careful, because this paper does have a limit to it. It isn't watercolor paper, it's very thick, but it isn't absorbent as such. You could of course do this on watercolor paper and add that page into your diary or journal at a later date. So that's where we're leaving it for now. I've got my squidgy splodgy mess, and I'm just gonna leave this to dry now, and we will come back in a mo. Okay, so I'm pretty much dry to the touch, so I'm happy to continue working. It's still a little bit wet up here, so I'm going to start at the bottom. So I'm going to start with my kind of beige colour pen and pen in the cups outline. Let's zoom in a little bit so you can get a bit of a close view. You can see ever so lightly sketched out where I need to go. So we've got the rim of the cup, which is going to come all the way around, almost like framing the coffee art on the top. And then we've got the cup here, which I might need to just rework the shape a little bit there. And then the handle is over here, and then the other side of the cup. So that's the outline. I'm just gonna fill it in quickly with the Tombow brush pen. Again, you know, the Tombow numbers just rub off. I use these pens so much that I don't think any of them have got the numbers on, so I need to just double check which colour it is. I've got a feeling it's 946 or something, but I will put, when I work it out, I'll put all the information down. So there we have our coffee cup shape. The next thing to do is to add in the kind of foamy milky top and the milk artwork. So what I'm going to do is I'm using this mid brown, and I'm just going to do the shapes, just draw the shapes in, so it's kind of like some hearts, and then it fans out to these kind of pretty shapes. And actually what I'm looking for is this colour, is the colour in between the milky froth, so it's where it's mixed with the coffee underneath. So we're just going to fill that in. So I know I've been pretty quiet. If you follow me on social media, I've been very quiet this summer because we've just been away so much. So we just came back from Norfolk. We had a week with the whole family, so all my brothers and sisters and their children, and also my mum, and we had a big kind of cottage that we hired out, and we spent the time together. It's just nobody's got a house big enough these days to fit us all in, so when we do all get together we need to do it en masse in these kind of lovely, we actually had 2 cottages, so we split between 2 cottages, and the kids had loads of fun together, and the adults got to kind of chill a bit because the kids had loads, they had all their cousins to play with, so you took the edge off that a little bit. But yeah, it was a really nice break. So there we've got the coffee and the coffee cup and the coffee shape. You can go back in and add in some of this kind of beigey colour to here. It's up to you what you want to do, if you want to leave it white or not. I'm going to just add a little bit, because on my original I coloured it in this beigey colour and then I added in white, so you could do it either way, but here I'm just lightly mixing it in. And then that's it for our coffee cup, so let's give that a moment. I need a little bit of shaping around here where the watercolour has left a slightly odd shape to my mug, but I think when I do the outline I can rectify that. Underneath we've got our coffee beans, so just as I said, we've got a bit of a kind of yin-yang shape going on, and we just fill in the gaps. You can do it in different colours of brown, you can do one side a bit darker, totally up to you. Just kind of putting these in over here, and then we'll move to the other side and put some coffee beans over here. So make sure that your artwork is dry underneath, otherwise this will totally bleed into the water, because these are water-based pens and you can actually use them as watercolour, although I never seem to be able to get it to work for me. I just don't seem to have the knack of it, but I've seen so many people use it as a watercolour pen, mixing it with water, but I'm not quite sure I've got the technique down. And besides, I've got such lovely watercolour paint sets that, you know, I can just use that. But it is a great idea if you don't have watercolours. So there's all our coffee beans in. So that's really all we've got in terms of artworks today. Now I'm going to go in, because we need to just kind of highlight our shape a little bit better of the cup. So I'm using a 0.8. You can so easily just use our hexagonal gel pens for this, and we just outline our coffee cup. This is where I need to just do a little bit of touching up, because the watercolour isn't quite matching, and that's why it's important that you do mark out your cup first, I think, because you've got an idea of where you need to keep it lighter. But we can definitely work with this, because the other thing I'm going to do is I am actually going to use a fine liner. Let me just find it. That's my pencil case. Yeah, I'm going to use a fine liner just to mark the rest of the cup in, and just to lightly outline this cup. So I want a finer pen for this, and I'm not doing like a solid line. I'm just kind of giving the idea, because that's where the milky fluffiness is. So just give an idea, and I can also just give an idea of that lip there, and I think that just kind of makes it. So the other thing I can do to just ease this kind of mess, I'll show if you can't see, ever so slightly on this side, I can just shade this in a bit more, just to match that up a bit. I've overlapped a little bit there, but I'm not too worried about that. And I can also just add a little bit of shading by going over in the same colour. Just gives a little bit of depth to our cup and adds a little bit of shadow to it. You could always go in as well with your white roller pen if you wanted to add. You could just maybe, if it's got a porcelain, it might have a little bit of a sheen to it, and you can add this in onto your milk froth as well if you wanted. You could do a totally different pattern. If you're a barista yourself, you might have got a better pattern you can do on the top there. So I'm happy with that. I might just outline some of my beans with my fine liner here. This is just a gel pen. I was looking at selling these ones. I'm not quite sure they replace the hexagonal. So, but they are nice to hold, these ones. So you might see these ones coming in and just kind of trialing them out. But here's just really roughly and raggedly outlining these coffee beans, just to give them, just to let them stand out a bit. There we go. And that is really all we need before we start putting in the extra details. So here's the fun bit where we take our ramekin or our cup and we kind of coat it with our coffee colour. So I'm just going to get a bit more brown and just run it on the rim of this. And I haven't done this on the template, but I kind of feel like one looks kind of nice. Oops, kind of nice up here. So I'm just going to go plonk like that. I really like the effect. And I also feel like just to balance it out a bit, I'm going to put one in the bottom right corner just to balance this page out a little. So I want it kind of coming off the page, and I'm going to have lined it again, and I'm just going plonk like that. And like I said, you can go over, if you want it to be a bit more watery, go over with your water on your brush. It can just be plain water just to drag that line out a little bit. And then we'll also use our brush to add in those extra flicky bits. So we're just tapping, let's zoom in a minute so you can see the effect. Just tapping the brush, loading it up with colour. If you don't feel confident, you could just load it up and just shake the pen a bit just to get a bit more of that effect. And of course now we've got that wet, we're going to need to leave this to dry, and I'll come back to you again. Okay, so we're back and I'm pretty much dry, so I'm just going to now add in my September header, which I have traced over from my template sheet. I am not 100% sure that this is completely dry because some of those paint splotches were quite heavy, so let me just put a piece of paper over where I'm working. So I'm just going to cover this whilst I rest on here. So I've mentioned this before, if you're tracing through from my handwriting, just take it slow and steady. There's natural breaks, so you just kind of stop where you can and lift off just to give your wrist a bit of a break, because especially when you're tracing, you tend to hold the pen really taut in your hand because you're stressing out about getting it wrong. But there's no such thing as wrong, right? Because this is your journal and it's whatever you want it to be. So there we go, we've got September written in. And then underneath, as you guys know, if you have been following for a while, I much prefer to use our monthly stamps, which are available in the shop. And don't forget that if you don't have a journal and if you don't have the stamp set and these are things that you want, you do actually have a 15% discount code as part of your membership to Patreon. So this month, your month is starting, the 1st is on a Thursday, so I've lined that up. Also, it's a 30-day month, so we'll wipe 31 off, which I forgot to do in my original artwork of this, but it's fine, it's fine. I just covered it over with something. I just coloured it in brown as a brown splodge, I think. This artwork's quite forgiving, so I'm just going to wipe 31 off with my nail there. Not the most technical, but you can use a wipe, you can use a bit of tissue, whatever you want. And I'm going to place it underneath my coffee cup, and there we go. There's a big old splodge over here, but that's fine. That's fine. And then let's zoom out and we'll show you the finished artwork. So everything that we've gone through today is mirrored over onto every other section. So the days, it all follows all of these techniques. So this is pretty much everything you need to know to get you through for the month. I really look forward to seeing what you come up with because I just love it. You know I do. Please tag me, send me, whatever you want. And let's get started for journaling in September. I hope you have a great month and I'll see you soon.